Vagrant's story is one of those games that just pulls you in with its atmosphere. The story feels like a dark medieval play with conspiracies, curses, and a main character who's more mysterious than heroic. What blew me away was how deep the weapon customization system goes. You can literally forge and adjust your gear to fit every single type of enemy. Personally, I love how the game doesn't hold your hand. It's brutal, it's moody, and it feels rewarding when you finally figure things out. This one is legendary. Castlevania's Symphony of the Night is the game that redefined Castlevania and basically created a whole genre. You play as Alucard, and the castle is this massive, interconnected maze that just begs to be explored. The part that really stands out is that moment when you realize the castle flips upside down. Like, come on, that twist is pure genius. For me, the best thing is the sense of discovery. Even after hours of playing, you'll still stumble on secrets that feel like hidden treasures. Alundra feels like a dream and a nightmare at the same time. It's about diving into people's dreams to fight their inner demons, which is such a unique concept. The puzzles are tough, like really tough, but that's what makes solving them so satisfying. What I find unforgettable is how heavy the story hits. Characters actually suffer, and sometimes you can't save them. It's one of the few games that made me feel the weight of failure, and I respect it for that. Brave Fencer Musashi is just pure fun. Musashi is an action RPG that doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's exactly its charm. You're the spiky-haired swordsman running around fighting goofy enemies and saving an entire kingdom. What I loved the most was the system where you absorb enemy abilities with your sword. It made every fight feel fresh. To me, Musashi is like that lighthearted adventure you play when you just want to smile and have a good time. Threads of Fate gives you two stories in one game, and that's its magic. Rue's tale is darker and more tragic, while Mint's is more comical and greedy, and both connect beautifully. The world is colorful and charming, but what impressed me was how different each character's journey feels. Personally, I loved Mint's side more. She's hilarious, and I couldn't help rooting for her, even though she's selfish. It's like the game knows how to balance emotion with humor.
Mega Man Legends 2 takes the Blue Bomber into full 3D adventure, and it feels surprisingly natural. Instead of the usual stages, you're exploring ruins, piecing together mysteries, and upgrading your gear along the way. The standout for me is the sense of exploration. It's almost like a mix of Zelda and Mega Man. My take? It might not play like the traditional Mega Man, but that's what makes it special. It's refreshing, and honestly, I wish Capcom had continued the series.
Don't even scratch my...
Legend of Mana is like stepping into a storybook where you write the chapters yourself. Instead of a linear tale, you place artifacts on the world map, shaping the story as you go. What stands out is how beautiful and dreamlike everything looks. The hand-drawn art is timeless. For me, the game feels less like a structured RPG and more like a collection of little adventures. It's cozy, it's magical, and it's the kind of game you can just lose yourself in.
Firebird attack! Firebird attack! Firebird!
This game is massive. Star Ocean: The Second Story has one of the most complex RPG systems of its time, with crafting, private actions, and multiple endings depending on how you interact with characters. What impressed me most was the battle system, real-time, fast-paced, and way ahead of its era. My personal feeling, it can be overwhelming, but if you dive in, it's incredibly rewarding. It's the kind of RPG that feels alive, where your choices actually matter. Tales of Eternia is all about adventure and friendship. The story takes you from a small, peaceful town into an epic journey across two worlds. The combat is classic Tales, action-packed and exciting, where you actually control the characters in real time. The part I loved the most was how the characters' bonds grow naturally. They joke, they argue, they feel human. To me, Eternia feels like going on a road trip with friends you'll never forget.
Demon twist! Demon twist!
Tales of Destiny is one of those early gems that gave us the blueprint for the Tales series we know today. You're basically thrown into a world where swords can talk, and yes, it's as cool as it sounds. The linear motion battle system was groundbreaking back then, and it still feels fun today. What I found most impressive was how charming the characters are. They might seem simple, but they grow on you. For me, it's not the flashiest RPG, but it has heart, and that's why I like it.
Parasite Eve 2 feels like Resident Evil mixed with RPG elements, but with its own identity. You play as Aya Brea, finding these mutated creatures while uncovering a conspiracy. The combat shifted more into survival horror than the first game, and honestly, it makes the tension stronger. What stands out most for me is Aya herself. She's one of the coolest protagonists on PS1. Personally, I love how the game balances horror with action, keeping you on the edge the whole time. If you've ever played Dark Souls, this is like its ancestor. Kingsfield is slow, heavy, and brutally punishing, but that's exactly its charm. The world feels lonely and oppressive, and every step is filled with danger. The part that struck me most was how exploration feels risky, but rewarding. You earn every victory. For me, it's not a game for everyone, but if you're patient, it's an unforgettable experience. Dragon Valor is basically an RPG mixed with a hack-and-slash fairy tale. You're not just slaying dragons, you're living through generations of heroes, with your descendants carrying the story forward. That's the coolest part, the legacy system, where choices determine how your bloodline continues. Personally, I found it refreshing. It feels like you're not just playing one adventure, but an entire saga.
Diablo on the PlayStation 1 is such an interesting take compared to the classic PC version. It's the same dark, gothic dungeon crawler we all know, but playing it with a controller and even co-op mode on console gave it a totally different vibe. You dive into endless dungeons, fight swarms of demons, and the loot cycle keeps you completely hooked. What really stood out to me was how impressive it felt on PS1. The atmosphere, the music, that sense of dread, all captured so well on a console. Personally, I think it's one of the most memorable PS1 RPG experiences, because it proved that even something as deep as Diablo could work amazingly outside the PC. Here's a game that definitely tried something different. The faceless 3D character models in Grandstream Saga are still one of the weirdest design choices I've seen, but honestly, it gives the game a unique identity. The story itself is a classic save the world setup, but told with enough heart to keep me hooked. And then there's the combat, real-time, one-on-one battles that felt pretty bold for a PS1 RPG. It's not perfect, but that experimental energy is exactly what makes it stand out in my memory. Back in the day, I stumbled on Darkstone thinking it was just another Diablo clone, but it surprised me. It's got its own flavor, character classes, quests, and even a hunger system that makes you think twice before rushing into battle. What really hooked me was being able to switch between two characters on the fly, almost like having a built-in co-op. It's definitely not as polished as Diablo, but it scratched that same dungeon crawling itch and gave me a sense of freedom I didn't expect. Now, here's a game that left me scratching my head in the best way possible. Baroque is bizarre, surreal, and drops you into this post-apocalyptic world where nothing makes sense at first. You die, you restart, and slowly the pieces of the story start to click together. The eerie atmosphere is what makes it stick. It's unsettling, almost haunting. Honestly, it's not the kind of game you play to chill out, but it lingers in your mind long after you put the controller down. When I first played Alundra 2, I could tell right away it wasn't trying to be like the first game. Instead of the dark tone, it went for a lighthearted, almost cartoon-like vibe. You've got puzzles, platforming, and action all mixed together, making it feel more playful than heavy. The variety kept things fresh, even if I personally still prefer the original Alundra's serious tone. Still, if you want something fun and quirky, Alundra 2 has its own charm. This one always felt like a guilty pleasure to me. Crusaders of Might and Magic isn't the smoothest game out there. It's rough, clunky, and a little cheesy. But there's something about hacking through skeletons and undead in the gritty fantasy world that kept me entertained. The atmosphere felt like a dark B-movie in game form, and weirdly enough, that's what made it memorable. It's not great, but it's fun in its own messy way. If Crusaders was the appetizer, Warriors of Might and Magic felt like the follow-up course. You step into the boots of a cursed warrior fighting to redeem himself, and it leans more into fast-paced hack-and-slash action. The part that stood out for me was the sheer amount of weapons and armor you could collect. It gave you that drive to keep pushing forward. Sure, the gameplay's clunky, but if you're into old-school action RPGs, there's a certain charm hidden in the rough edges.
And that's our journey through the 20 best PS1 action RPGs. For me, the PS1 will always be a truly special console. Every game on it has its own unique vibe. The blocky polygons, the lighting effects, the music, it all comes together in a way that's impossible to mistake for anything else. And while these action RPGs might not have shined as brightly as the traditional turn-based RPG giants, titles like Vagrant Story, Alundra, and Brave Fencer Musashi remain incredibly special and unforgettable. They gave us adventures that were just as impactful. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next trip down memory lane.